Ahmed, let's look at what's come out in the past 2 weeks. Turkey says Khashoggi was killed by a 15-member Saudi assassination team. Turkey has identified all the members of that team, some of whom, according to U.S. reports, and there are reports in today's U.S. newspapers, say that some of these people who came into Turkey have close ties to the Saudi security services and the royal security detail. What is Saudi Arabia saying about these 15 men, one of whom is also a very well-known Saudi forensics and autopsy expert?
All these are speculation, really. I mean, just probably a month and a half ago, we had our summer vacation plan, and in the span of 2 weeks, there are 700,000 Saudis, actually, they were vacationing in Turkey. So definitely there is a huge traffic in tourism between Saudi Arabia and Turkey. So to put these 15 people, the number, the ranks, how close, listen, you have to give MBS some credit. He's not going to send somebody from his team to do something, let alone this is not the threat or this is not the DNA of how Saudi Arabia really take care of people who's opposing them. You have one of them who's sitting at your studio, Al-Ahmed. So, you know, this is not the way Saudi Arabia deal with things. We are waiting for the investigation. So you have two countries. You have Turkey and you have Saudi Arabia, G20. They know what has been happening. They know how to conduct investigation. But everything your esteemed guest actually mentioned or said, it's all speculation. The speculation of the audio and the video, let the Turks release it. The speculation about the 15 members, the speculation is somebody is actually holding a chainsaw and cutting the body and listening to music. I mean, all this, you see the media, especially CNN and the media, hold captive to a channel called Al Jazeera. They have lobbyists they pay in Washington in order to film all these things. I was surprised by Senator Graham when he said, he's a very good friend of Saudi Arabia, but Mr. Senator, you take action against Saudi Arabia and the case is not closed yet. We don't have a closure. How much of an anti-America is this? How much is so un-American for a company to pull up from the FII, okay, just because of a speculation of a case? And we're seeing day by day, the New York Times, Reuters, is pulling all what they actually put in their newspaper because they are not confident of the sources. So how much Saudi Arabia is going to pay for all the rubbish that is going on the media and the speculation and people just taking things and make it? We have an investigation, gentlemen. Let the investigation take its pace. Let's know what the conclusion is. And from there, if Saudi Arabia is convicted, we'll talk about it. If Saudi Arabia is not, and there is a third-party country, regional country that could actually assist in this assassination, then this is a different talk. But we've been accused and we've been bullied. I mean, the media seems they have their system is already set on attacking Saudi Arabia. But I'll tell you, Saudi Arabia has so many cards to retaliate, and oil is not one of them. Okay, but there is a lot of economic, a lot of alliances, a lot of things. If you ban weapon, the market is open. If you decide not to take oil from Saudi Arabia, any country doesn't, take oil from Saudi Arabia, the market is huge. We can self-sustain. We don't need anybody, but we would like to work with the international community. Our best ally is the United States. Traditionally, every chain in the United States is over here in Saudi Arabia. We would like to continue this, but there is a different, the media has been hijacked, and it's all for non-facts.
Okay, let me bring it back to the studio. Ali Al-Ahmed, this is the point that Riyadh has been making from day one, that all this is speculation, that the investigation continues, and until that investigation is complete, it's just pure conjecture.
I mean, I don't think so, because we have strong evidence, and the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and Ms. Lagarde of the IMF and all of these people who are reacting, they're not reacting because it's speculation. These are credible people who supported the Saudi monarchy for a long time. And now they believe, and Mr. Corker and others who spoke about this. You can't dismiss all of these people. Regarding targeting critics or dissidents, I've been targeted. That could have been me, but I didn't trust the Saudis to walk into their consulate, which Jamal did. This is something, it's not beyond the Saudis. Really here, it's important to have an investigation, but you cannot trust the Saudis. You cannot trust a rapist with investigating his own rape. That's ridiculous. So The Saudis should invite an international United Nations independent investigation if they think they are innocent.
Turkey is part of the investigation.
I understand, but the Saudis should invite, because Turkey is impartial. It's not impartial. So let's invite the UN investigation and let's see what they do. The Saudis will not allow it because there will be a deal. And if they are confident about it, they should come forward and say, open their doors and have these people delivered to Turkey.
All right.
And we have strong evidence that these people were there, videos, passport, all of it is there. They're not tourists.
Okay, Bulent, is Turkey committed to a clean, open investigation into what happened?
Well, your last guest said that Turkey was not impartial in this investigation. I think that's premature to say. I mean, Turkey is obviously in the key country in this equation. The crime was committed on its territory, albeit within the Saudi diplomatic compound. And frankly, this investigation does not move forward. The crisis does not proceed to the next stage until the Turks release their report. Now, eventually, if there is a crime, one would hope, one would expect that the Turkish Attorney General would launch, would issue indictments against the people involved. Now, what the evidence, what we're seeing in the newspapers that your first guest from Riyadh was complaining about is clearly based on Turkish sources initially. I mean, the reference to the audio, to the video, I'm not sure what that's in reference to, is obviously from Turkish leaks. There is a leak in the Turkish newspaper, Yeni Şafak today, providing details of the alleged crime. We have to wait for the investigation, and then we'll go to the next step. But to go back to what I was saying, here the U.S.-Saudi relationship is something that we will obviously look at, and the impact of the crisis and how it moves on that. We also have to look at, obviously, Saudi-Turkish relations. Again, that's going to be affected one way or the other by what happens. And finally, U.S.-Turkish relations was going through a difficult phase, even after the release of Pastor Brunson. And the fact that Pompeo went immediately from Riyadh to Ankara to talk to them, not just about the Khashoggi case, but the others, shows that Washington is clearly hoping that the way that Ankara moves will help to diffuse the crisis before we get into the kind of thing that Daniel Serwer was talking about, which is congressional action.
Right, Bulent, just one legal point there. And if this investigation shows that the Saudis were responsible, you mentioned that the Turkish Attorney General could indict those whom he thinks is involvement. If it is those Saudis who came into Turkey, it would mean the extradition of those 15 men from Saudi Arabia to Turkey. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, you know, the Turkish authorities could issue those indictments and ask for the extradition, and then it's then up to the Saudi government to accede or not. We're not at that stage yet. And let us also remember that there was a contact at the highest level between President Erdogan, the president of Turkey, and King Salman. And you know, clearly there are contacts between the two countries. And we now await the completion of the investigations. And one way or the other, the Turks are going to have to say what it is that they found, and they will do so officially, as opposed to the unofficial leaks, which is actually filling the pages of the newspapers at the moment. So let's be patient to see what exactly the Turks are going to move, and then we can speculate about what happens in this triangle involving Riyadh, Ankara, and Washington will happen.
Right, and Daniel, talking about patience, after his meeting with the Saudis, Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, said that what is needed right now and what the Saudis asked for was more time. Let's watch.
They made no exceptions to who they would hold accountable. They were very clear. They understand the importance of this issue. They're determined to get to the bottom of it, and that they will conduct the report, and we'll all get a chance to see it. They each promised that they would achieve that for us.
It seems yet the United States has basically taken a step, or maybe several steps back here. We're just going to be onlookers and not get involved in this.
I think the Americans would very much, the administration at least, would like to take that posture if it possibly could. I do think more time is needed. I think a thorough investigation is needed. I wouldn't rely entirely on a Saudi investigation for obvious reasons. I wouldn't rely entirely on a Turkish investigation for similar, though not identical, reasons. I think there is justification here for some kind of international examination of the evidence once it's been produced by the Saudis and by the Turks, who have the main sources of information on what happened. I think the Americans...
When you say international investigation, are you talking about more than the investigation that's been announced by the Saudis and the Turks?
Yes, I think the family, Jamal's family, is asking for such an international commission of some sort. I think there should be some room for that, because I just don't think we can rely completely on interested parties to do this, including the Americans, I think, which is also an interested party. So I think there is justification, but the Saudis and the Turks, the judicial authorities, are entitled to some time to conduct the proper forensic investigation. You don't do this in a week or two. This requires some significant time, and we're going to have to be patient, and patience, of course, in these political matters is hard to come by.
Right. Ahmed Al-Ibrahim, would the Saudis be open, amenable to an international investigation involving several countries?
Well, definitely it will. I mean, if this is what it takes, it will. But after what the Saudi team in Turkey and the Saudi intelligence gonna gather, because again, I go back again, it's not about only Jamal Khashoggi, when going into the embassy. It's the night before, who he had dinner with. It's all the cell phone calls. It's coming from who he met in the United Kingdom. What kind of links probably it has within the soil of Saudi Arabia. So this is huge. So it's going to take time until the investigation actually be completed. And there is a lot of things. And Jamal Khashoggi, he's a very controversial personality. He has a lot of connection. He has a lot of people. He's was partially, at Afghanistan. He is part of the MBs. He's part of many things we know and we don't know. So all these things has to become known for the intelligence in order to make an assessment. We have to put in mind probably there is a third or a fourth country that actually stage this whole orchestra, or the investigation has to see. Again, it's a criminal case. We are trying to solve it. We are working with the authorities to solve it. We hope it wouldn't get politicalized and it doesn't been taken and bashed against Saudi Arabia, because by time it comes and whoever pointed fingers at Saudi Arabia, and it's not actually Saudi Arabia, I think Saudi Arabia is going to take huge measures, like what they did with the Hyperloop and Richard Branson. They pulled all the investment from the company and they came back crying, trying to explain their position and how they had to do this for the local consumptions of their countries. We don't need anybody. We do understand everybody's faith. We do understand governors and senators. They would like to collaborate and talk about Jamal Khashoggi's, like Senator Coker. He would like to talk about it because he would like to get a lot of ground consumption from his voter, and he needs to be in the Senate more, and he needs to talk about a humane, case. So all that we do know. And as an ally to America, we're going to nod our head and we're going to stay quiet. But it's so much that Saudi Arabia can stay quiet. We can take so many hits from the United States in order to help whoever in the ground. But the relation with the United States, it's became a burden on the Saudi leaders. However, they are trying to take this legacy since King Abdulaziz and to honor this relation.
All right. Let me come back to the studio. Ali Al-Ahmed. We've heard from President Trump that there could be rogue elements involved in this. And now we've just heard, again, there could be another country involved in this, a third or a fourth country.
I mean, that's the Saudi narrative, that they will blame other people for everything. That's nothing new. Reality is, I would second what Daniel said, that you cannot trust the United States in this issue and similar issues, because when it comes to Saudi Arabia, because when it comes to politics, governments and politicians will say and will do whatever it serves them. And usually it's not the truth. I don't think the truth here will come completely in this affair, in this episode, because all the sides have an interest. and that interest does not include complete honesty. The Turks, they are impartial because Jamal was a great advocate for them, and they supported him, and also they might want to use this to take for their own advantage, and that includes covering up part of the case in terms of especially who was responsible, who was when these people, the killers, were talking during the killing about who were they pleasing, because they didn't know they were being recorded, and the information is on that audio tape that who is the person behind this murder.
Okay, Daniel?
I'd like to focus for a moment on Jamal, because I don't think there's anything all that controversial about Amal, at least from the American point of Jamal, at least from the American point of view.
He was a critic. He was a dissident.
Look, he wasn't really a dissident.
All right, let me.
I've
I've got some tape. In fact, Jamal Khashoggi actually appeared on this very show, The Heat, last November, and this is what he had to say. He was talking about the arrests of more than 200 prominent Saudis accused of corruption. Let's watch this.
Siding with all those crackdowns, there are talks of reform, like Prince Mohammed bin Salman is promising to eradicate extremism in Saudi Arabia, and we need that. And he is promising to eradicate corruption, and we need that. But he's doing all of those positive things in the midst of silencing other opinions.
Go ahead.
Jamal was not really a dissident. He accepted the ruling family, he accepted the ruling system, the governance system in Saudi Arabia. What he was trying to do was open up the sphere of free expression in Saudi Arabia, and you hear it quite clearly.
I wouldn't say that even.
You hear that in what he just said. He was somebody who pursued journalism in a serious way himself, and that's why he was with Osama bin Laden once upon a time, and at a time when the Americans were sympathetic with what Osama bin Laden was doing in Afghanistan, and he was a serious columnist for the Washington Post as well. This was not somebody who was using the Washington Post to unseat the king in Saudi Arabia.
No, he was a loyalist. I have to say that. He was a loyalist, and actually, in fact, I think he has more gripes with dissidents than he had with the monarchy, and I know that. I experienced that.
Right.
Jamal never reached out to me, and he refused any contacts, and I know that because it happened to me. He was a proponent of the monarchy, but not in the entire monarchy. Part of it, like Mohammed Salman, he was critical, but he was also respected.
He backed the wrong faction?
He backed the wrong faction, and he he has pictures of Mohammed bin Salman. He wrote articles defending Mohammed bin Salman. In that same month he was here, I saw an article of him. He defended Mohammed bin Salman and called him a reformer, and he even excused that there are no political reforms. But this has to do with supporting one part against another part, and that's why he was killed.
You know,
Not
Daniel,
about journalism.
very quickly, Daniel, I've only got 20 seconds. If he is such a benign figure, why is he possibly now dead and, killed in such a brutal way?
Look, I can only speculate at this stage, but I believe that it shows the fragility of the Saudi kingdom.
Okay.
I think the Saudi kingdom is excessively sensitive to criticism and reacts the way autocracies react rather than the way
Monarchy
more
only accept
open
absolute loyalty.
governments.
Anything like and other than that, it's not acceptable.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for being with us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.